How exactly does one go about making a sequel to one of the best and most influential horror films of all time? I mean, if you're Mike Flanagan, you make it look easy.
You can hear me. You're magic. Like me.
I don't know about magic. I always called it The Shining.
Dr. Sleep is the newest film directed by Mike Flanagan and is the sequel to The Shining based on the book by Stephen King. It stars Ewan McGregor, Kylie Curran, and Rebecca Ferguson, and it tells the story of an older Danny Torrance roped back into the supernatural world of The Shining when he meets a young girl with an incredible amount of power, and makes it his goal to protect her from a dangerous cult of psychic vampires who feed on those who shine. There's so much to cover here, and honestly, it goes without saying that The Shining by Stanley Kubrick is a masterpiece of horror. Kubrick took Stephen King's novel and made it his own, which really means he made it better, and created a classic, timeless film that's been analyzed up and down throughout the ages. And it's widely considered to be one of the best horror films ever made, and Stephen King notoriously hated it because it changed too much from the novel and took out all the needless bullshit. So now here we are, almost 40 years later, and Mike Flanagan, one of the best working horror directors of our time, stepped into possibly the biggest shoes he could ever have to fill. This is quite possibly the biggest undertaking I've ever seen, having to create a film that is both faithful to the original creator's vision, faithful to your own vision, worthy of being a standalone film, worthy of being a successor to Kubrick's film, and worthy of being a successor to the novel. And I'm happy to report that Dr. Sleep managed to do all of those things. It's faithful to the book, it's a worthy follow-up to the movie, it rectifies the things Stephen King hated about the movie, and it's a damn good standalone film. It's just absolutely beautiful, and it's incredible that Flanagan managed to achieve this. For those of you going into this expecting a direct follow-up to The Shining, don't be fooled. Dr. Sleep is very much its own story, using The Shining as a springboard. Its themes are similar, but different enough to make it feel like its own entity, even when it is relying on familiar visuals from The Shining in its third act. Whenever the film does allude to The Shining, though, its attention to detail is nothing short of impeccable. And it shows what a damn visionary and craftsman Mike Flanagan is. When you're revisiting The Overlook, it feels exactly like Kubrick's film, but with Flanagan's own flair. Certain shots are recreated identically, the set design is the spitting image. The sound design mirrors that of the 1980 film. It's such a damn love letter when the Shining elements do come into play that you can't help but smile. The cast is all absolutely phenomenal. The adult Dan is essentially just the shell of a man created by the trauma of his childhood. He stopped using his shine, drowning it ironically in the same alcoholism that took his father. And Ewan McGregor plays this so well, really capturing the essence of this beaten down man who is just trying to fly below the radar in order to escape the horrors of his past. He eventually sobers up and starts using his gift again to help others, and the way he does that is just handled so beautifully. Of course, that's before he's eventually dragged back into the horror show by his psychic pen pal Abra. And all of those scenes and Dan's entire arc in this movie is really beautiful and emotional to watch. Kylie Curran as Abra is a newcomer, and honestly, you would never know it from her performance. Abra is an extremely powerful shiner, and Curran plays that so well and brings such a power and confidence to her performance that it almost makes you forget she's only 13 years old. She's confident, she's strong as hell, and honestly, she's a total badass. But the one character I really want to touch upon is the villain, Rose the Hat, played incredibly by Rebecca Ferguson. Honestly, she steals the show here. Her performance is by far the best in the film, and Rose is such a captivating character that every second she's on screen, you're just glued to it. And every time you're away from her and her cult, the True Knot, you're just waiting for them to come back because all of their scenes are so incredibly done. Rose and her gang are some of the most well-fleshed-out villains I've seen in a horror film in a long time. They're absolute monsters, for sure, but you understand their reasoning and why they're doing the things that they're doing, even if the things that they're doing are terrible. You understand their motivations in a way that's incredibly refreshing, and it makes their entire group a wonder to watch. Rose has this distinct style and matriarchal presence to her, and even though you absolutely hate her guts within a few scenes, there's a certain part of her that's actually really easy to understand. The rest of the cast here is also on point. There's a lot of familiar faces here, especially if you're familiar with Mike Flanagan's work. Jacob Tremblay, Henry Thomas, Alex Esso, who does an incredible job emulating Shelley Duvall. And honestly, every single one of them gives a damn near perfect performance. And I want to give props to Jacob Tremblay for delivering what is by far one of the most disturbing scenes in the entire film. The movie is pretty unapologetically Stephen King faithful, for better or worse, as far as the script goes. It delves incredibly deep into the very weird mythology of this world and the lore of the Shining power itself. And it gives you a lot of backstory on how the Shining and the True Knot function. We get these glorious glimpses into the astral plane and a ton of world building that feels weirdly organic despite how insane some of it is. And I truly loved every single minute of it. Now, the movie isn't perfect by any means. I did have some issues with it for sure. The editing in the first act is kind of all over the place, and we're jumping from location to location to location and time period to time period a lot in the first 40 minutes or so, but the speed of some of it just gave me some really intense whiplash. There's a scene toward the back half of the movie that involves a shootout, and it just felt wildly out of place in this film. Yes, book readers, I'm aware it was in the book, and it doesn't make it feel any more at home here. The movie just comes to a dead halt to turn into this weird action movie for about 10 minutes, and it doesn't work. But honestly, those are my biggest gripes, and outside of that, I only had a really small nitpick, and that is that Henry Thomas's Jack Torrance, you can't compare to Jack Nicholson, and I wish they hadn't even really tried. They could have kept the character just off screen or in silhouette or literally anything. They really did their best to make him look like Jack Nicholson, but it just, you can't compare there, man. You just can't. That being said, though, I really did love Dr. Sleep. It really is a worthy follow-up to The Shining, both the book and the movie, and a worthy standalone film all its own. Mike Flanagan can truly do no wrong, and this is another movie of his that delivers in terms of scares, in terms of gore, and especially in terms of emotion and heart. I'm going to say that Dr. Sleep is a must-see. It's a beautiful story about overcoming trauma, overcoming guilt, and healing and reaching one's full potential. And it all leads up to a third act that's just so bonkers and so satisfying that I couldn't help but fall in love with it. It's the best King adaptation of the year, and I really would urge you all to see it because it's underperforming at the box office, and more people need to watch this film. It's a really, really good one. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching. If you like this channel and you want to see more, click down there, like, comment, subscribe. There's a Patreon link down in the description if you want to donate to this channel and help it grow and develop and help me raise money for my cat that's going out of her fucking mind off screen right now. Please consider donating. You could be like all these cool people right here. I would really appreciate it. Even $1 would help. But even if you don't, thank you so much for watching anyway, and I'll see you all very soon.
Come and play with us forever and ever.